Hi guys, so today I'm gonna look at my top books of 2013 and talk about how I feel about them now. Now this is an idea that I kind of stole from Maddie and B from Heartful of Books. They did a video revisiting their old favorites too, and I really like the idea, so I thought I'd do this as well. And what I have actually kind of planned on doing, and I'm not sure if this is gonna work out in a good way, but I am kind of doing a combination of like talking about these and how I feel about them now and a reaction, because I actually don't know what this consists of. All I know is that Bitter Blue is number one and that Fire is somewhere on there, and then I imagine there's lots of Mortal Instruments books on it as well. But other than that, I have absolutely no idea which books are on this. I just don't know. So this is the first year that I was on BookTube. I started my channel in April, so there's probably also books on it that I didn't even have in any wrap-ups. I just thought it would be really fun if we kind of looked at it together and me just kind of reacting to this list in a way. I think this was kind of inspired by Lala's closet unhaul from Books and Lala. She does these amazing closet unhauls and reacts to her old book hauls and then tries to read them. I'm not really sure. I'm thinking that's probably where this idea came from, and I'm not sure, maybe it's not gonna work, but I thought it would be fun if we just look at these together. So let's do this. I'm a little bit scared. Maddie and B were actually doing it where they talked about, you know, these are the books that they still consider their favorites, and then the other books that they don't consider favorites anymore. And for me, it's really my top lists. They are not necessarily that I consider them favorites. It's just more that, you know, these were just the best books that I read this year, but most of the time only like the top 5 or so are actual favorites. Obviously depends a little bit. Not all of my 5-star books are necessarily favorites, and not all of my top books of the years are necessarily favorites. And yeah, okay, let's just get into it. I'm just so interested to see.
Hi guys, today I will talk about my top 10 books of 2013.
Oh, my old intro.
The reason why I'm not doing top 13 as pretty much 99% of BookTube is because I don't actually have 13 favorite books.
I still stand by not doing like, what are you gonna do this year? Are you gonna do top 17 of 2017? I'm sorry, that does not make sense.
And if you would see my Goodreads, you could see that most books I read this year are actually rated with 5 stars. But this doesn't mean that these are really like my favorite books. Even some of the books in my top 10 now are books that I really like this year. But it's not like these books made my all-time favorite list. I'm not sure if I will be able to. Number 10 is Mockingjay from...
Alright, that's interesting. Oh yeah, right. I think actually Catching Fire would have to be on this list as well, because I read that New Year's Day in 2013. Yeah, I mean, I still love The Hunger Games. Mockingjay is definitely still by far my least favorite, and I'm pretty sure it's not on my favorites of all time, but I still really just love this trilogy overall.
The Hunger Games didn't make it into this top 10 list because I've read it in 2012. I think it was the very last book that I read. You probably know my love for The Hunger Games. I don't have to talk about this. And
Do you?
Mockingjay. The 9th book is Me Before You by Jojo Moyes, which is...
Yeah. Yeah, I'm not even gonna go into detail on this one. I'm just kind of gonna skip it. Me Before You is an incredibly problematic book that I was just not able to see that at all when I initially read it. I really loved it at that point, but I'm actually pretty sure I got rid of my copy. Yeah. So I guess that says enough about it. Like, yeah, no. Not, yeah. I mean, this wasn't a favorite in the first place, but I feel very different about it now.
The 8th book this year was Divergent by Veronica Roth. I love this.
Yeah, I mean, I guess Divergent deserves its spot on this list, but I just feel sad about this trilogy. It's so weird to me. Like, I know I read most of my books that I read in my life during my time on BookTube, but still it feels so weird seeing these books on here.
This is my favorite out of the series, so none of the other books actually made this list.
Oh, I love how I'm like trying not to like actually talk about how much Allegiance sucked. I'm just like, well, this was just my favorite. I'm not gonna talk about the other ones.
I mean, I probably could have lived with only this book. The 7th book is The Time of My Life by Cecilia Ahern.
Yeah, I still love The Time of My Life, and that is definitely one of my favorite books. Like, that is for sure on the list.
Another great contemporary novel that I read
It's not
this
contemporary,
year.
girl.
And it does have a bit of fantasy, but just like this bit of magical stuff. And I really like this.
I think I didn't know what magical realism was back then. Bless. Bless.
They are in our world, they are in our time, but there's always something magical about the books by Cecilia Ahern. So the 6th book on my list is Fire by...
There it is, Fire. Obviously, still one of my favorite books. I mean, I reread it in English and I loved it even more. It's so good. I love this trilogy.
You might know that I love this series so much, and it's definitely my favorite series of the year. It's just amazing.
This is where it all started.
There's not enough people talking about it. Really not.
There's still not enough people talking about it, okay? I'm actually really surprised that Fire is only my number 6. I really wasn't expecting it. I'm kind of thinking about... So, Bitter Blue and Catching Fire is number 1 and number 2. Has to be City of Glass on it, definitely. But the other two? I genuinely have no idea right now. I don't know.
Now we're on to the top 5, and the books I'm going to show you now are ones that actually made my favorite list.
So yeah, as I said, like The Time of My Life and Fire are also ones that are definitely on my favorites list now.
And number 5 is City of Lost Souls by Cassandra Clare.
City of Lost Souls. Honestly, I just don't remember each of these books enough. Like, okay, no, for sure, I know I would not consider City of Lost Souls an all-time favorite book at this point, like, at all. Especially because I think after I read City of Heavenly Fire, this is only number 3 in the series. I think before City of Glass was my favorite, and then City of Lost Souls was like number 2, but I think City of Heavenly Fire is now number 2, and so yeah, 100% not would consider this favorite of all time anymore. Like, if I end up finally rereading the series at some point, obviously I might be like, oh no, I still love this one, but at this point I would not mention it as a favorite of all time.
The 4th book is The Book Thief.
The Book Thief! I'm so stupid! I totally forgot. I think I read that January or February that year. Yes, The Book Thief!
This book is amazing. It's a masterpiece.
Yeah.
And this is definitely a book that I recommend to everyone.
I still do.
So great. 3rd one is City of Glass.
There it is, City of Glass. Now, this is still my favorite of the Mortal Instruments books, and even though I haven't read it in a long time and I haven't read the series in a long time, I would definitely still consider this one of my favorite books of all time. Now, this is obviously also something that might change if I reread them. I don't know, but I'm not really thinking I'm gonna reread it anytime soon because I just have such good memories of it. So I'm not really looking forward to rereading it and seeing all of the flaws that other people have pointed out in the past few years. So will just remain one of my favorites of all time. And in the first place, it was never one of my favorites because it's such a well-crafted book, but because it's really fucking enjoyable. And so, yeah.
I love this book so much that I actually wouldn't really have a problem with the series just ending right here. It would have been a perfect ending.
I love City of Heavenly Fire, but I still agree with that. I think at that point I didn't know that this was actually where the series was gonna end, but still really agree with that. Like, you can just tell that this was an actual ending.
The 2nd book is Bitter Blue by...
Well, yeah, obviously Bitter Blue can't be number 1 if Catching Fire is on the list. I was sure Bitter Blue would be my number 1 because I loved that one so much, but I forgot that Catching Fire would also be on the list. So this definitely makes a lot of sense. Although at this point,
once again a book from the Graceling Grimm series.
Graceling, by the way, is now also one of my all-time favorites. When I originally read that, I listened to the German audiobook and it was actually an abridged version. And so I liked it. I gave it 4 stars, but it was not like on this list or one of my favorites. But now I would definitely also consider this one of my favorites of all time. After rereading it in English, I just love that trilogy. You know it.
This book is just great. It's written really great. It has a great story. It has a great main character.
Mm-hmm.
I like the romance and yeah, it's. I think it's really amazing how this book is one that isn't like super special, but it's still just something that I enjoyed so much.
I'm genuinely getting so emotional about this right now. This is still how I feel about this trilogy, and I just think it's so special because it's so simple and because it doesn't really have any of the tropes. This trilogy, I love it so much.
My number one this year,
Surprise,
this
surprise.
probably isn't a surprise to any of you, is Catching Fire by Suzanne Collins, the second book in the Hunger Games trilogy. It's probably my favorite book of all time as of right now.
Yeah. Catching Fire was actually, like, I have a favorites list, but if people were asking me, like, what's your number one favorite book, I said Catching Fire for a really long time, probably until A Gathering of Shadows came along. I think at this point I wouldn't really be able to mention a number one favorite. It would probably kind of depend on my mood. But Catching Fire was actually the one book that I was able to mention as my number one favorite book of all time for a really long time. And I remember that I was really proud of that because so many people were like, I can't choose a favorite. And I just always loved Catching Fire so much that I could just mention this right away. And I was so sure of it. And obviously I still love this and it's still one of my favorite books. But at this point I would say I like Bitter Blue just as much. And it's not this book that's like so much higher than every other book, but I still obviously absolutely love it.
The story is just action-packed, it's emotional, it's funny, it's dramatic, there is romance, there is just everything. It's also just giving me so many feels. I have so many feels about it that it feels like it's real.
Not normal.
Like, this is a real story. Like, this is something that actually happened to me or anyone I know. These were my top 10 books of 2013.
Yeah, that was basically the end of the video. I did a giveaway back then, but yeah. Yeah, so these were my top 10 books of 2013. And I have to say that I really still agree with a lot of these. Like, a lot of these are still books where I get why they are on the list, or that are even still favorites today. Some of these I even love more today than I did back then. I think it's actually really interesting how in the first year of BookTube I read 2 of my favorite trilogies. While I obviously love Shades of Magic, I would always mention Shades of Magic in one breath with Graceling Grimm and Hunger Games as my favorite trilogies or favorite series. And yeah, I was never really aware of that, I think. But then again, you were probably really aware of it because I have not shut up about any of the series for 4.5 years. So yeah, I thought this was actually really interesting and fun. Let me know if there were any surprises, like were you surprised by any of the books that were mentioned? For me, I don't think there was like a big surprise. I just really think I just kind of completely forgot about Me Before You. And I just kind of erased that book out of my brain. So I was like, whew, where's that coming from? But yeah, let me know some of your books that you considered favorites years ago that are now still your favorites, that you now love even more, or that you now feel very different about. I would love to know some of your stories around that. And yeah, thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this. I don't know if this is enjoyable to watch. And I guess I'll see you soon. Bye!